Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, welcome to the second plenary of the ITF 2020. I'm Ali Aslan, international TV presenter and journalist, and it's my great pleasure, to be back here at the ITF, and more importantly, to be back here in person with all of you. The second plenary is titled Better Collaboration for Greater Inclusion, and it will look at how transport policies together in cooperation with health, housing, education, environmental and land use policies can promote communities that are more inclusive. Some of the questions that will come up during this session are: what are the challenges in designing integrated mobility policies that promote inclusive economic growth? And can inclusive mobility be the engine to empower communities for more cross-sectoral collaboration? And without further ado, I want to invite my distinguished panelists up here on stage. First up, she's the Minister of Transportation in Colombia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Minister Maria Orozco Gomez. Delighted to welcome here on stage as well. He's a member of the board and vice chairman of ANA Holdings. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yuji Hirako. Equally delighted to have with us here to discuss this very important subject matter, the Secretary General for Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport. Marusha Kardam is here with us. He is the Director General for the Airports Council International World, better known as AIC World. Luis Felipe de Oliveira is here, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, he's a Director for Strategy, Cooperation and Quality at the Moroccan National Railway Office. Saad Chandit is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to have you with us. And as you probably have noticed, we're lagging a bit behind in terms of time here on the second day, but it's no worries. Like a good pilot, I will try to make up for this time and finish up here at 4 p.m., something that ANA Holdings certainly can appreciate, I would reckon. Minister Gomez, before we dive into the questions which we have, of course, we all start, this will be the procedure. I will give you 3 to 4 minutes for some preliminary remarks, and then we can open it up for more Q&A for the segment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you to the ITF for the organization of this panel. Well, to begin this information, I would like to go back to a moment 4 years ago when I took position in the Ministry of Transport of Colombia. At that time, the ministry was perceived mainly as bricks and cement, and not as something that needed to connect people. It was like disconnected with the people, with the regions, with the communities. So from the first moment, we set out the challenge to change this reality and this perception. This implied, obviously, turning the way transportation infrastructure projects were executed and were carried out, bringing them closer to the people, since it was impossible to execute these works without the support and the acceptance of the surrounding communities. Actually, most of our projects that were a PPP program, a very long PPP program, were stopped. We had 21 from 29 contracts stopped. Most of them had an execution of less than 1%, and we had more than 31 legal tribunals. That was more or less what we found. And most of the problems had to do with not being close to the communities. Most of the problems had to do with the execution challenges in territory. And this is why we changed completely and we focused on people and being perceived that the ministry that worked with the people dedicated to connecting the life of Colombians. Since this, of course, was precisely the mandate of President Duque. he always mentioned that we needed to conclude the public works because they didn't belong to a government or to a political party or to a president or to a minister. The pace of working and executing an infrastructure project takes at least 4 years, and in Colombia we have 4 years government. So if we didn't work all together, isolating the sector from the politician partisanship, from the polarization, from what we have been facing all over the world lately, we wouldn't have been able of finishing the projects. What was the idea? To make everybody feel that they own the project so that we all work together. We were also looking at how we could improve the quality of life, and most of our projects had an important social component. But we also built on that, and we designed the new generation of projects with a pillar that was sustainability. And this sustainability had to do not only on the financial and technical way, but mainly social and environmental sustainability. So we created and involved in the pre-feasibility stages of the project the needs of the community. We also created accounts for climate change projects within the infrastructure projects, and we also made a mandatory commitment of investing at least 0.5% of the capex of the projects in community and social projects. These were mainly what we were going on, think that we're building resilient infrastructure, also mitigating climate change impact, but more or less bringing in the communities to have an impact, a greater impact of the projects in the community, not only providing employment, but providing social development of the communities around. We also made a big bet on multimodalism, taking into account that the multimodalism will also make a more resilient transportation in Colombia, mainly improving the river transportation of cargo will also reduce substantially the greenhouse emissions, and we needed to meet our goals, and we as a government and as a country committed to reduce by 51% greenhouse emissions by 2030, back in December in the Paris Agreement. So mainly that's what we have been working in, and what we have been able is developing a program that has delivered results. We have already delivered 6 of the big projects. We're delivering 20 more before leaving government. And I believe we have made financial closings from international financiers and even green bonds for more than $8 billion, because this is a long-standing program. So inclusiveness has been the name of the game in order to be able to execute this PPP program.
Thank you so much, Minister Gomez. Inclusiveness is the name of the game indeed, and it's the name of this panel as well. I will come back to you, of course, in just a moment to talk about the challenges that your country is facing when it comes to its transportation infrastructure. But let me turn now first to Yuji Hirako. Delighted to have you with us here. Mr. Hirako, many challenges, of course, also on your front. Delighted to hear your preliminary remarks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I very much thank ITF Summit because this session took me to Leipzig for the first time. And this is my first trip abroad since the occurrence of the COVID-19 2.5 years ago. And I'm here so excited to join you in person. Thank you for your kind introduction, and I'm looking for this session because its topic is of deep interest to me. I have been in aviation industry for over 40 years. Yeah. And I have come to believe strongly that one of the major missions of entire transportation industry is contributing to creating a world where everyone has greater access to mobility. I have a few numbers I want to share with you as we aim for a more inclusive world. Through our internal research, we found that as little as 6% of the world total population, 7.6 billion people, used airlines every year before the pandemic. This means 94% population has not. Factors such as age, physical ability, or poor infrastructure can be a huge barrier to mobility for many people. 8% of the Japanese population and 15% of the world suffer from some kind of disability. Furthermore, 9% of the world and staggering 29% of the Japanese population are classified elderly. By 2036 in Japan, 1/3 of the population will be over 65. This is a problem that many countries will be facing in the future. And I believe the world is looking to Japan how to cope with this growing concern. Thus, one of the key needs for the future is more inclusive mobility options. However, what one airline can do alone is limited. Here, we have to make important strategic decisions. One of them is how we approach competition and collaboration. From a management point of view, finding the proper balance between competition and collaboration is a very difficult issue. But I believe the role of collaboration will become more and more important. At ANA, through collaboration with various stakeholders, such as competitors, governments, and other industries, we aim to create a global society where no one is left behind. To achieve this vision, one of the most important initiatives is Universal Mass, named Universal Mass, which is ANA's original concept that combines universal design and mass together. MAS stands for Mobility as a Mass, as a service, and acts as a one-stop reservation platform for various transport services such as railroad, buses, and airplanes that can be accessed from a mobile phone. Universal Mass is based on this concept and will make transportation services easier to use for all people, including people with mobility impairment and the elderly. As an example, travelers needing wheelchair who have a transfer from airplane to rail must individually check accessibility options and request assistance from each company. Furthermore, if either the air or rail segment are delayed, those travelers cannot get the connection assistance they requested because the delay information is not shared between transportation companies automatically. With Universal Mass, multiple transportation arrangements can be made at once, and relevant information can be shared automatically in case of delays or other issues. ANA is working on Universal Mass to solve these issues in collaboration with JREs, that is Japan's largest passenger railway company, and other partners across corporate lines. Since ANA started the Universal Mass initiative 3 years ago, we have been in constant communication with them to share our vision of universal mass potential. Although they emphasized with our vision, it took some time before they were ready to collaborate. And many opportunities to share our vision and the benefits of universal mass with our partners, they have come on board. An important feature of this collaboration is customer information management. We are prototyping an anonymous data management system that is linked across pre-flight and post-flight transportation providers. It is based on each individual customer itinerary. Through carefully managing information, Universal Mass can provide secure, seamless travel experience for all people. Our vision is that Universal Mass will spread to more companies across the entire transportation industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yuji Hirako, for giving us your perspective based on a very long career in aviation. And collaboration is a word that you've mentioned numerous times, and perhaps we have more time later on in the Q&A section to talk about some of the main challenges that you might be facing collaborating with competitors and across industries. But for now, let me turn to Marusha Kardama, the Secretary General of the Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport. Marusha, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Ali, and thanks very much to the ITF for organizing this summit in person, giving us the opportunity of having this in-person networking experience again, and certainly for choosing this topic for the summit. I wanted to leave five key messages in this introductory part, if I may, Ali. The first one, colleagues, I think we seem to have this tendency in the transport sector of understanding working on decarbonization and working on sustainability as mutually exclusive. It's a false dichotomy, and we are today trying to crack that false dichotomy. I heard last week in another conference the expression of the transport decarbonization tunnel vision. So I think we got to drop that tunnel vision, because if we acknowledge the reality, we know that many of the problems that we are facing in transport systems worldwide have to do with this lack of broader consideration of these sustainability issues and of meaningful collaboration with the actors and the stakeholders that are behind them. We also know that we tend to understand and govern transport as if it was an individual economic sector, when actually what it should be is a service a service for the inclusive societies. But of course, if we understand, therefore, transport in this way and we govern it in this way, what we need to do, I think the Minister was already highlighting it, is very much connect the different interconnected challenges that we have at hand, whether it is the mitigation of emissions, whether it is the equity aspects, whether it is, of course, air quality, road deaths and injuries, the resilience of transport for resilience of communities, and of course, the socially just transition for breaking the heavy dependency of our sector on fossil fuels. But another thought I would like to leave is that, of course, we cannot look at these major interconnected challenges of our sector in a transport silo. What we really need to do is to connect these challenges to the wider socio-economic transformations that we are seeing out there, whether it is the notions of local economy, shared economy, circular economy, energy dependency, and so on and so forth. The second idea or message I wanted to leave with you is that transport is not going to get to the next level of inclusion and impact in that area if we do not really put people first. So people first, not technology. The idea is that some technologies, of course, can be very tempting because of their ingenuity, isn't it? But we really need to look at whether they are matching society needs, whether they are cost-effective in the given context they are applied, or whether they are not bringing any unintended consequences of increasing inequality. So the question we need to ask ourselves is not whether technology is feasible, whether there is a technology solution, is whether technology is going to result in increased inclusion. And therefore, I think we need to work with technology providers to help them assess whether their value propositions and their products are really going to go in that direction. A third message I wanted to share with you as well, colleagues, is that there is no transport policy that is inclusion neutral. So that means that we need to be deliberate about pro-inclusion policies and really apply them in a consistent manner. And I hope I can develop that a bit later, perhaps, Ali, if we have the chance. My fourth message is that I think that the transversal nature of transport makes it a natural vector for cross-cutting collaboration, for cross-collaboration across different sectors. But that collaboration is not going to happen alone if we really do not enlarge the discussion table, and if we really don't take it to another level of curating that institutional dialogue in an structured way. Are we doing enough? Is the table large enough? Well, first thing I want to do is really congratulate the ITF Summit for giving the opportunity of having with us today the disabilities constituency, the gender constituency, unions, and I wouldn't like to forget about the road safety NGOs who have been also with us during the summit. Let me just provoke some thoughts. I could argue that we are also missing some agents, not in the summit, but in other policy dialogues as well. For instance, what about engaging as well with informal economy actors? What about engaging with pro-poor and slum dwellers organizations? What about engaging a bit more with the youth? I could also argue that we need to engage not only with transport supply actors, but also with those who shape the demand of transport. Where are, for instance, the major employers, the real estate owners and managers, those who own stadiums or who own big business parks, for instance? And beyond making the table wider and larger, as you said, Minister, we really need to put communities at the very center of transport planning. It could be beautiful to see, for instance, rural communities deciding their transport needs. I think it would be terrific as well to start applying participatory budgeting principles to some of the decisions on investment in some of the communities. The last message I wanted to leave as well would be precisely about investment. And the idea of dropping notions of best value for money of the past and trying to assess those investments with that community-centered approach and that inclusion approach. And really that means very much about interrogating the social and environmental impact and value for money of every policy decision and every investment decision in transport. I'm going to leave it here, Ali, hoping that we can come back. Thanks.
We certainly will, Marussia. Thank you so much for the many points that you have made. A lot of food for thought indeed, which we will pick up and incorporate into the discussion in just a moment. But let me turn now to Luis Felipe de Oliveira, the Director General of AIC World. Luis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ali. And it's my first time in ITF, and I would like to congratulate the Secretary General for the organization of the meeting, and of course for the presence of such a interesting and great panelists and the opportunity to discuss these important topics. We are seeing now the travel coming back. You know, we spent 2 years of this pandemic, basically not traveling. And during the last 2 months, I travel more than I travel in the last 2 years. Basically, I took over the job first June 2020, and working in the transport sector for more than 25 years was, I think, the first year that I didn't have basically a trip outside. And when you don't have that, we started to see the importance of air transport, the importance of this whole ecosystem that we have, that is not only an airline and an airport. You know, we have the whole ecosystem that includes the ground handlers, includes the restaurants, the free shops, and the others that we have, and these mini cities that the airports turns. That's why basically it's the whole community that needs to be served, and basically these mini communities or these communities sometimes are the size of the cities. Depends on the size of the airport. You have thousands of employees, and that is very important for the social and economic benefits as well for the communities that we serve. And when you started to see that, and you start to coming back, we are seeing how difficult now is to get these people back to work with us. You know, we are an industry that faced 2 years of crisis, and people are a little bit not prepared to come back and to work, and you are seeing certain constraints in certain airports. And I think it's the moment for that we need to start to talk about this mobility and say how we can be more inclusive as an industry as well, how we can be inclusive as an industry that receive more gender balance. We are not an industry that have a good gender balance, how we can include people with disabilities to help and support, how we can include the whole community in the process that will help us to be a better industry for the future. And talking about that, we always talk about now the build back better. And what is this build back better? The build back better, we need to rethink about what we did in the past, how we can improve from the future to turn this industry more inclusive, more effective, and that serves the world. We, together with the tourist sector, we represent more than $3 trillion in the global economy. Basically, 10% of the global GDP depends on the tourism and transport sector, and that represents 65 million jobs around the world. That's why we have an industry that is effective, employ a lot of people, and we have space to have this diversity and this inclusion in our members as well, in our communities, and I think that's very important. The other topic I would like to touch base, of course, is the environmental, is our passport for the future. We are seeing the good developments in terms of the trying to build back better, a better future, more inclusive, including as well the decarbonization of the sector. Some regions are doing much better than others, but I think it's our passport to grow. If you'd like to reach double the size that you expect for the next 20 years, we need to be more green, we need to be more effective in the way that you build our airports, in the way that you fly our aircrafts, in the way that we include people in our airports as well. And in the last point, I would like to mention that we, as ACI, we are trying to work with these communities, because we believe that we are not only the airport itself, and we would like to include in the spectrum this 60% of the jobs that the industry that are based in the airports. That's why basically how we as an airport can have an inclusive approach that benefit all as well. And I hope that you have opportunity to discuss a little bit more in the next minutes. Thank you.
We sure will. Thank you so much to Luis Felipe de Oliveira for his remarks. We will revert to you in just a moment to take a deeper dive into what you just said, the three main points that you have laid out. But now, last but certainly not least, Morocco obviously plays a key role here at the ITF 2022 as the host country, and the fabulous reception that your country has provided last night. For us, we have with us Saad Chandit. He's the Director for Strategy, Cooperation and Quality at the Moroccan National Railway Office, and he will be speaking in French. So I'm just looking around the table if we have enough translation kits. If not, just a pointer to the tech staff here to provide us with some. Saad Chandit, you have the floor.
J'attends les casques. C'est bon?
Please.
Merci Ali. Tout d'abord, c'est un grand plaisir d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui dans le cadre de ces travaux relatifs au transport au niveau mondial. Et c'est une opportunité pour qu'on puisse partager ensemble où en sommes-nous et les réflexions sur lesquelles nous sommes en train de travailler. Juste pour contextualiser les choses, et comme vous le savez, l'histoire de l'humanité, elle a été toujours intimement liée au développement du système de transport qui joue un rôle, je dirais, catalyseur pour le développement socio-économique de nos pays, pour l'aménagement du territoire et également pour la mobilité ou bien les déplacements au quotidien. Et comme vous le savez, nous avons observé ces derniers temps des mutations importantes qui ont bouleversé les choses. C'est le cas du changement de paradigme qui est dicté par la crise de la Covid-19. C'est le cas également des exigences de la nouvelle normalité. C'est le cas des contraintes d'approvisionnement. C'est le cas de la volatilité des prix. Et justement, ces changements ont confirmé l'utilité et l'importance des systèmes de transport et l'importance et l'enjeu de les développer davantage pour faire face dans les meilleures conditions à la mobilité des biens et des personnes. Donc, c'est un ensemble d'enjeux et de défis auxquels nous sommes confrontés et auxquels toute la communauté est appelée à apporter les précisions et les quelques solutions pour pouvoir y faire face et justement pour pouvoir asseoir, je dirais, une mobilité, nous l'avons dit, inclusive, une mobilité solidaire, une mobilité sûre, mais surtout accessible à toutes et à tous. C'est important. Et là, on ne peut pas le faire si on ne relève pas le défi qui est lié à comment on va appréhender le transport. Nous ne devons plus penser en tant que transport, en tant que secteur, mais nous devons raisonner mobilité durable. Pourquoi mobilité? Vu la multiplicité des secteurs qui sont concernés, vu la transversalité du sujet, autrement dit, c'est tout un écosystème qui est derrière, qu'il faut prendre en considération et le mettre au centre des politiques publiques, que ce soit prendre en considération je dirais, les politiques d'ordre économique, par exemple, social, territorial, culturel et infrastructurel. Tout laisse à dire qu'aujourd'hui, nous devons travailler dans ce sens. Mais malheureusement, comme vous le savez, il n'existe pas de solution toute faite qu'on peut transposer d'un pays à un autre ou bien d'une région à un autre. Il faut prendre en considération nos spécificités pour pouvoir bâtir un système, je dirais, fiable, viable, abordable à toutes les catégories socio-professionnelles. Mais comme nous l'avons suivi hier et aujourd'hui, il existe un noyau, je dirais, un noyau dur sur lequel on peut s'appuyer pour développer cette mobilité et coopérer autour et qu'on peut le structurer en 6 leviers importants. Le premier levier, il consiste à façonner, maîtriser, je dirais, le cadre référentiel. Et par là, on entend le cadre réglementaire et normatif qui est extrêmement important, tout en mettant en place des mécanismes pour pouvoir maîtriser la gouvernance du secteur et identifier les rôles, les engagements de tout un chacun pour pouvoir réussir cet enjeu. Le deuxième levier, et qui est extrêmement important également, c'est œuvrer dans le sens de mettre en place et de s'appuyer sur une meilleure politique de planification pour mieux adapter nos systèmes. Il s'agit là de mettre en place des systèmes de planification stratégiques, mais intégrée, c'est important, de manière à se doter d'une vision globale qu'on peut décliner, que ce soit au niveau régional ou bien au niveau des villes, sur la base de schémas, je dirais, et documents de planification de déplacement au niveau local. Le troisième levier qui est également important, c'est travailler dans le sens d'offrir et exploiter, je dirais, les systèmes de transport dans sa globalité autrement, en se basant premièrement sur mettre en place et à la disposition des citoyens des offres et des solutions alternatives, multiples et collectives, de proximité et de porte à porte, et qui sont accessibles à toutes les classes socio-professionnelles. Et là, on peut s'appuyer sur, c'est important, on peut s'appuyer sur la multimodalité et l'intermodalité comme élément fondamental pour pouvoir actionner ce levier dans les meilleures conditions, en cherchant la synergie entre les différents acteurs sur le plan tarification, sur le plan information, sur le plan justement offre et qualité de service à mettre en place. Quatrième levier, je dirais qu'il faut actionner également, nous l'avons entendu hier et aujourd'hui, c'est l'importance et l'enjeu de stimuler davantage le numérique, l'innovation et le système de transport intelligent pour pouvoir booster la mobilité inclusive. Également, il y a l'importance de diversifier et réorienter les financements. C'est un enjeu qui est important. Il faut chercher et mettre et promouvoir des mécanismes de financement intelligents accompagnés de montages institutionnels et financiers en prenant en considération les spécificités de chaque pays et ou bien de la ville qui est concernée. Cinquième levier, d'ailleurs, qui fait l'objet de notre discussion, c'est promouvoir la coopération autour de ces aspects pour pouvoir, je dirais, capitaliser sur les bonnes pratiques des uns et des autres et renforcer ce partage qui est extrêmement important. Et avant de clôturer, je dirais, ces différents leviers, il y a un levier qui est extrêmement important et qui est également transverse, c'est qu'il faut profiter des nouvelles technologies d'information et de communication pour mettre en place des bases de données intelligentes, structurantes, de manière à pouvoir bâtir notre planification stratégique sur des bonnes bases en apportant les réponses nécessaires et les éclairages nécessaires à un certain nombre de questions qui paraissent en premier lieu faciles, mais si difficiles. Qui se déplace ? Comment il se déplace, pourquoi il se déplace, où il se déplace, c'est important pour pouvoir bâtir notre, je dirais, feuille de route et apporter les réponses utiles pour cette, je dirais, mobilité exclusive. Bien entendu, tous ces leviers, s'ils sont actionnés dans les meilleures conditions, ne manqueront pas d'avoir des retombées significatives sur tous les acteurs. En premier lieu, le citoyen, en termes de développement je dirais, de société inclusive et de bien-être et d'amélioration de l'expérience voyage. Et également sur les pouvoirs publics, en améliorant le système de gouvernance du transport et sa pérennité, et non moins important sur les opérateurs en renforçant la synergie et la coordination. Merci.
Thank you so much to Chamdeep for giving us an overview of the importance of the railway infrastructure, not just in your country, but internationally. We have 40 minutes left, 40, until the end of the session. I was never good at math, but I think that falls down to 8 minutes per speaker. So if you're disciplined, time disciplined enough, obviously, we can squeeze in 2 questions per person, 4 minutes each, or 1 with an 8-minute answer. It's at the end of the day, that's up to you, Minister. But let me come back to what you were saying in your preliminary remarks, talking extensively about your country's transportation infrastructure. What are some of the main hurdles, some of the main challenges you're facing in that regard?
Well, I believe the first part of it is continuity. we built upon an intermodal master plan that was built within 3 governments. It was finally released by 2015, and it prioritized mainly the big connections from the center to the borders, to the border with the Ecuador or to the north coast. Mainly the big connectivity that where most of the cargo travels all over the country, even for providing the center of the country or for exporting or importing. This is something that we made a huge effort allocating a big PPP program, which more than, I believe, a $10 billion program, which is a huge infrastructure program anywhere. And I believe at the beginning, we didn't understand that we needed to involve communities and societies around, because even though you have great people to allocate to the technical, the feasibility, the financing, but executing the programs, executing them is going to the territory, and you need to work and articulate yourselves. And we needed to articulate with mayors, with governors, with the communities, with the academia. We needed to build open public systems for the information so that the people had the information of the problems that the projects faced, because a lot of the times there are problems that nobody planned before, but you needed to face them, and as long as you are transparent, people will support you. But if you don't do it, it's going to be always a matter of corruption. People will always think that it's a corruption and not understanding the necessities. Then the next challenge is, after connecting this big connectivity, we need to connect the regions, the rural areas. We need to include the rural areas, and this is something that we did. We built on articulating among the national government and also with the regions, and even with the congressmen and with the political parties. Even though they are opposition parties, I finally understood that they needed to work together so that we can bring in the communities and make them feel owners of the projects, so that it didn't even provide employment to them while they were building the projects. They also invested in social programs for them, and they make them feel. We have actually, some of these projects have won an international prize, because one of its command control center, they also design a place with the communities around will use for fairs, for exhibiting their products, for selling their products. And actually it was environmentally conscious too. It was built around with the environment of the Eje Cafetero where the project is. So I believe the next phase and the next challenge is how to keep that and how to look the sources of financing for what we need, not only connecting the big cities and the ports, but connecting the country with the regions and bringing in so that the communities can have access to bring their products to the centers of consumption, but also the kids to go to their school in the rural areas, but also to go to the health community centers. I believe this is a huge challenge, and having the financing for it. In that sense, we believe we have been able of bringing in for the big strategic projects, project finance, but for the other regions, we need to bring in public financing. And we need to have access to green bonds and green financing, taking into account that all these projects today are designed with environmental purposes and taking into account the needs of the communities. I believe that's one of the big hurdles we need, and when we need to have a continuity in that.
Funding, certainly public and private.
Public and private,
the key here. I hope to come back to you, Minister, to talk about what is equally important, of course, the inclusion and gender equity in that regard. But let me turn to Yuji Hirako here once again, because we're talking about challenges, and you've already mentioned the need to collaborate with competitors and across industries. That sounds very good, and on paper I think that's something everybody would support. But what are some of the hurdles and challenges that you are facing in pushing this topic?
Okay, thank you, Ari. And for some background, this project is a product of ANA's internal accelerator program named ANA Virtual Hollywood, and was launched in 2019. We are still in the beginning stage and started this service focusing on passengers needing wheelchairs. However, our grand vision is to make this service available to all people with limited mobility by collaboration between public and private sector that go beyond traditional boundaries. Of course, this comes with new challenges such as handling of passengers' personal information. Airlines are required to collect personal information from passengers. However, collaboration partners like rail companies and taxi companies in Japan are not. We have implemented a system to manage it safely. At the same time, at the time of reservation, customers are issued a single-use itinerary number. No identifying information is given to other service providers, just the itinerary number and essential information for providing service, such as wheelchair types and route information. In this way, we can protect the customer's privacy and still provide a seamless journey from pre-flight to post-flight. Therefore, we are working on standardized interface that all transportation providers will share. The Japanese government has also been a strong backer for our efforts. For 2 years in a row, the cost of proof of concept for universal mass have been subsidized by the Japanese government. Furthermore, local governments also actively participate in these initiatives and provide the proving grounds for demonstration and testing. Support like this gives us great motivation to keep moving forward. Although universal mass is still a prototype, we have received many positive feedback from users. One wheelchair user commented, "If universal mass spread throughout Japan and around the world, we will be able to go whenever we want, wherever we want, more freely and smoothly. I hope that universal mass will be implemented across safe society and that other transportation companies adopt it as soon as possible." Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very interesting to hear you talk about how ANA is creating a more inclusive global mobility and experience by collaborating beyond its traditional domain. Thank you for sharing more about that initiative and specifically how you handle the personal information. I think that's something that is of great interest here, of course, to the participants, but certainly more so beyond. Marusha, you mentioned in your remarks that transport policy is inclusion neutral in a sense, that we need deliberate pro-inclusion policies, if I understand you correctly, that are consistently implemented. What are some of the key approaches that you're seeing then in that regard that can be applied to get there finally?
Let me offer a friendly amendment there, if I may, Ali.
Of course.
What I meant is that there is no transport policy that is neutral in terms of exclusion. So if we don't apply a deliberate approach to make them pro-inclusion, we're just taking for granted that they are inclusion neutral, and they are not. It's like thinking that there is transport policy that is gender neutral. It doesn't exist. If we don't make it gender positive, it's not really going to go the consequences, isn't it? The intended consequences of gender inclusiveness. That was a bit my departing point. Some thoughts about how to making that happen. Let me play an experiment a bit with you. We usually tend to think that I'm going to go back to the decarbonization tunnel vision that I was talking about, isn't it? And we tend to think that we need better urban design to decarbonize transport in cities. Let's swap the perspective for a moment, and let's think how transport and mobility systems in a city, for instance, can contribute to the fabric of a community and can even contribute to better urban design instead of being the other way around. I think we have some examples of that. Societies that are less private car dependent, they see how public space is turned into shared space for community living. We know, you know it very well, practitioners and ministers of transport, that when we invest in walking, cycling and public transport, we are really investing in thriving communities. We are investing in healthier communities. We are investing in place-making, community building. This might perhaps therefore take us to ask a few questions when we interrogate this notion of how mobility systems can or not help shape more inclusive fabrics for communities. For instance, what are the principles we are applying to subsidize electric vehicles? Do they respond to aspects such as contribution to access, to safety, to the shared use of public space? Let's think about other notions, for instance. Sometimes we have great notions, isn't it? But do we think enough about the potential unintended consequences of very well-intended notions, but when we apply them to wider geographies, does it really happen? We talk a lot about planning transport policy on the basis of proximity approaches. There is a lot of discussion, for instance, in Europe about the 15-minute city. What happens if we take the notion of a 15-minute city to a global south city that faces urban sprawl? could there be any unintended consequences in terms of the opposite to exclusion, exclusion, social segregation, and so on? So I think that sometimes what we need to do perhaps is change the perspective and not use the departing point of what do we need in order to plan transport well, but it's the other way around. What is good transport planning going to offer to the fabric of our communities? That would be my point.
And thank you for making it, and thank you for
with pleasure.
And specifying obviously the inclusion neutral elements of the question. Luis, you already talked about how airports are working towards building an inclusive, equitable, and perhaps more diverse aviation ecosystem for all. Now, there are a lot of policymakers at the ITF and in this room, I would suppose. How can governments, how can policymakers help you, assist you, further this cause?
Thank you. It's interesting because listening to the other panelists, we all have things in common. You know, we all talk about cooperation, partnerships, private public investments, the role of the governments, the role of technology, the decarbonization, the connectivity, the gender balance. And basically that is something that I'm seeing in all the conferences I go. That's why if I close my eyes and I be in any conference in the world, that is the topics that we are discussing. And I think that is important because if you analyze that according with the World Health Organization, we have a billion people that is estimated with a certain kind of disability, or the people are getting, aging, and if because of that is reducing with reduced mobility. Other things like autism and other things that are not considered sometimes are not physical, but you see there is certain differences, and you need to see how we can attack, how we can approach that as well. And talking about the airports a little bit, we have we're trying to be more inclusive. You know, in ACI, for example, I used to see an African-American lady that spent 11 years in the organization. I'm a Latin leading a world organization as well in the aviation sector. That's why I think we try to be more inclusive in our organization as well. And we have a plan. That's why we have the chairs of the organizations. They follow a kind of 4-year plan. And in the next chair of the ACI will be a female, that will be a lady, that will be the first time a lady will be the chair and the president of a global organization in aviation sector. That's why we are very happy for that, because we are planning that, we are doing that to happen. In my own organization, 54% of the people are female, and we have in the top we have only one. That's why that we need to improve. We need to prepare these people to reach there, and that is also partnerships with the governments, because we need to see how we can prepare these ladies. Here we have a very balanced panel, but how we can prepare more people to be engaged in the aviation sector to reach these positions. And in terms of disabilities, I think there is two ways to see, and we are working very well on that. The first one, I think, as you mentioned now, is the governments. How we can together, for example, with ICAO, that is our global body in terms of International Civil Aviation Organization, how we can create a global regulatory framework, especially on accessibility. And we are presenting that to ICAO in the ICAO assembly this year. ICAO have an important assembly this year that they do every 3 years, and we need to put some position papers. And that is the one that we are pushing this year, to say how we can include the accessibility in the airports in many areas in the regulatory framework that will be implemented by the countries in the future. And how we, as ACI, support our members to implement that as well. It's not easy, it depends on a lot of investments, and basically we had from material from handbooks to training, online training, and we are preparing accreditation as well, so we have airports accredited in mobility as well. And just a few examples, you know, people that travel a lot, sometimes you don't realize, but if you started to see around, If you go to Mexico City Airport, for example, the people that check your passport and your boarding pass before you go to the gate are people usually in wheelchairs. They say how we can include these people to do a job that they can feel comfortable to do, and the airport approved that today to work on that as well. In Vancouver, for example, there is a program that they create like procedures for the people before they travel. Other airports, you have like areas reserved for the people that need to special assistance, for example. And there is sometimes people don't want to talk about they have certain kinds of certain kind of disability, and there is a project called Sunflower Laner Program that goes from different airports in the world, from Heathrow to Seattle, for example. And if you have a sunflower, the staff recognize that you need assistance, and you need to talk about that. So a lot of things that governments and private initiative can go together, and it is inclusion that we must need it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting information indeed that you have provided. I'm sure new to many people here, certainly for me. Thank you so much for highlighting it. We have 25 minutes left in this session. Chandit, we're moving from airports now again to railways. This is obviously your bread and butter and the division and field that you are very much in charge of in your country in Morocco. And it seems that your country is trying to place much more emphasis on railways, making it a more integral part of your transportation infrastructure. Is that assumption correct? And if so, is there specific plans, a specific vision behind your government's plans to implement these, and perhaps a timeline that you could provide?
Merci Ali pour cette question extrêmement importante.
Vielen Dank. Thank you very much for this important question. We watched a film earlier, and the railway company or railway operations in Morocco have been reformed. There have been many changes, and railway plays an important role for the dynamic of our country and of the economy. A lot of things have already been said. 10% of the jobs of the Moroccan population are in railway, and 6% of the GDP in Morocco are generated by railway. So this is a very important sector in the Moroccan service industry. This is an intended policy which acts as a lever for our economy. And it is also about social inclusion and land use. These reforms and these changes only affect the first level of our system, the construction of our mobility system between cities, based on specific schemes. This is about land use planning in various areas and in various transport modes. For example, railway, highways, ports, and of course also railway operators. A lot of investment has been made here, quite quickly as well. And there are many unresolved issues in the entire Kingdom of Morocco. The second level I would like to mention is the development of the transport system, especially in the field of urban mobility. This benefits everyone, and various measures have been adopted. And this is also the time where I want to take the opportunity to talk about our mobility plan. We have public transport. We funded public transport, and I'm thinking about trams in the cities, and a lot has been done in this sector. 2 large cities in Morocco are covered by this program, by the system, and the system is to be rolled out across the country. And of course, there's the institutional level, which plays an important role in this respect. Departments were established in the individual cities on a local level, on a city government level, but also the regions themselves have an important role to play in transport and urban traffic. So a regional approach is important for our country as well. And that is where railway has a part to play. It is not an exception. The transport system in Morocco developed rapidly, but there's also a larger cycle to take into account. We started up a program, an investment program of approximately 4.5 billion dirham from 2010 to 2018. And this is a program for the improvement of the network, for building new railway stations, for securing railway operations. But it also affects telecommunications. We want to have more trains on the rail, and many projects are interconnected in this field. There's the conventional network, but technology also has an important role to play in order to make sure that the first line between the Arab countries and Africa can be established. We're talking about Casablanca, the Casablanca line to the north of the kingdom, a railway line of 200 kilometers, which allows for a speed of 320 kilometers per hour. That is a great example and an important example, and when it comes to the dynamics of our country. It is very positive for our society and also makes a contribution to inclusion, mobility and sustainability. It's a great way that we've come. We've come a long way with this also when it comes to competitivity. And it's a great example that we're pleased to present here. But again, we have to look at investments, we have to look at CapEx, and we need something that is accessible for the entire society, for all walks of life, and therefore it is important to have a dedicated politics, dedicated policy here. We have to offer different price levels, which are accessible and affordable for everyone. What does it mean for us? It's not an elite project. It is a project for everyone. It is a transport product that should be affordable and accessible for everyone. And it is really important, and everybody should be able to benefit from it. So what is the result as of today? When it comes to punctuality, we have reached 98% of all our trips, and when it comes to customer satisfaction across all customer categories, we have come up to 92%. And it is an exemplary project that should be reproduced. Of course, the individual specificities of countries have to be considered. We're talking about inclusion and mobility, and it will have a positive impact on the economy as well. It is a topic that is very important, and I would like to invite you to participate in the 11th edition of our conference in cooperation with the International Association of Railway in Morocco in March next year. You're all welcome to join us there.
Thank you so much. We're all putting down that date in our calendar as we speak. March, we're going to be there. But thank you for your remarks. Very clearly, your government has laid out a very specific vision of making railways much more relevant, incorporating it much more into your country's infrastructure and beyond, from what I understand, connecting African countries, as a matter of fact, perhaps being a role model there. Minister Gomez, you've already, in your remarks, emphasized how important it is to generate public policy with an emphasis on inclusion and gender equity. How is your government faring in that regard? Are you leading?
Absolutely. Well, but anyway, I believe it is different when you look into urban mobility. Our national government helps the regions and the different cities to finance the public transportation systems. And we mandate to be inclusive with regard to gender equity, but not for favoring women by itself, just because if we don't look how women move, we're not going to have really accessible public transportation systems. When we look, and we have been measuring that, in every city, women make more trips than men. Usually men go back and forth from work to their offices to their houses. While women, because of the economics of care, take kids to school, take kids to the doctor, whatever it is, it's a cultural issue or whatever, but that's a reality. So if you want to design and to present to the national government a public transportation system in order to be financed by the national government, and we finance 70% of it, you need to include that since the feasibility stage, because that's the only way of giving coverage and being accessible for everybody, for elderly people, for kids, for doctors. So we require that to be included since the studies. We also require a safeguard of employment within the construction, and we also require not only that, but also campaigns in order to prevent the workers to harass women while they work through the public stations when the public works are. And we also mandate to have at least a percentage of women employed when in the operation process, but not at the managerial level only or the administrative level, but also we work in the training processes for non-conventional works for women, like drivers, maintenance, and these type of things. This, when we're talking about, and this is something we required and verify before saying, yes, we're going to co-finance the system. And we have campaigns already in the different public transportation systems in different cities of the country, precisely to prevent, to make women feel secure, but also to include them and to provide more access to an equitable labor force. With regard to the connection within the country, because if you look at the cargo, you don't look at how women move, but you look at how the cargo move, which is completely different. And you know, in that sector, this is a sector that's traditionally masculine. However, we've been working, empowering, and we have today associations of transporting companies that are headed by women, which was not common before. And I believe that had to do with how, well, we are a member of a gender parity government. I am a member of a gender parity cabinet for the first time in the country. And of course, my whole directive team during most of my position has been women. And I believe leading by example makes a difference. And on the other hand, with regard to the construction of public works, and in that sense, as I said, this was something that has been designed and planned through several governments. This is something that is not isolated from one government. We have conciliated that and prioritized the works with the private sector, with the associations, with the universities. We, of course, this is a sector that has been traditionally a men's sector. We have included safeguard in order for the bidding processes so that they include women in the working force, not only in the construction phases, but also in the maintenance phases. And we have been developing special trainings with our National Technical Institute of Training so that the women not only work, well, of course, at the managerial level or at the administrative level, but at the public works, managing, for example, the complex machinery that is used in public works. And we have very important examples, both at the ports, building the tunnels, where the women manage the tunnel, and we have been giving that as an example, and also leading by example as a role model, bringing in and inviting women to study or to train itself in those sort of things, because usually they are better paid than the other positions. So this is something that you have to include it today, and we include it because we adopted a large recovery or reactivation of our economy plan once after the pandemic back in 2020. We did it mainly because we had a large informal economy and we needed to provide employment because there was a huge unemployment because of the quarantines. And in that sense, the new bidding processes, and we bid it, I believe, more than $10 billion in the different, both PPPs and public works. We included all these safeguards for including women employment because our gap of unemployment for women was larger than for men. Today, I believe we have delivered that, and even though still the rate of unemployment for women is more, it has deepened. The gap has reduced, and we have had the largest formal employment in the history of Colombia in the last year and a half, in the last bidding processes that we have done. So I believe we have been inclusive and take all those issues into account.
Certainly the right steps have been taken, but as you said correctly, of course, this can only be done in cooperation with other stakeholders, to bringing them all together. But from what I'm hearing, Colombia is leading, is not just aware of the fact, clearly also embodied by your prominent role in the government, but making headways there. Thank you so much, Minister Gomez. Yuji Hirako, you've talked, interesting enough, how ANA is moving beyond its traditional domain to create a more inclusive global mobility experience. And again, collaboration is, of course, the key word. It's in the title, better collaboration for greater inclusion. And sometimes it takes bringing in on board competitors and other industries as well. What is the specific ANA vision there?
Yes, I think the one key point is that collaboration can lead to more inclusive and customer-oriented solutions. And in all industries, it is beneficial to think from the customer's perspective. We can be aware of their needs and find opportunities to collaborate with them, with competitors in a way that does not violate antitrust laws. Let me share an example how we achieved this with Japan Airlines, one of the main competitors. Early on in the pandemic, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, created guidelines for all airlines. They asked each member airline to incorporate them into their policies on accessibility during COVID-19. Our first impression was if we combined our knowledge and experience with Japan Airlines, it would be more effective than going at it alone. We approached JAL with the idea of working together, and our collaboration started. Collaboration between two of Japan's major airlines has created more inclusive service standards in the airline industry. Not only that, but also we have been able to share best practice across other transportation sectors. Moving on to the challenges that I mentioned earlier, some are the technical, like handling personal information. Other challenge is more philosophical. Collaboration requires empathy with a cause. Empathy alone is not enough. Potential collaboration partners must also see how the outcome help them achieve their own corporate mission. The entire reason that makes our collaboration possible is because you could see how all stakeholders' goals are aligned. To do this, we have to understand the issues facing potential collaboration partners and how we can solve them by working together. Of course, these collaborations have to yield positive result for customers and business alike. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Interesting to see the outreach to competitors in this regard as well, and other stakeholders. I think very much needed if we are talking about genuine collaboration and inclusion. Let me come back. I'm looking at the time. We still have 7-8 minutes. We still have time to. Absolutely, absolutely, Marusha. And you've been, if I understood you correctly, you've been advocating throughout your remarks for the assessment of investments from a broader perspective. Moving away from the traditional cost-benefit analysis. So, what change then, in your opinion, is needed to move away from the traditional pattern way of thinking?
Thanks, Ali, for giving me the opportunity of cracking that one. Let's put things a bit into perspective. We know that the financing gap in the transport sector is massive. It's usually estimated at around over $40 trillion through 2030. So the question is, are we going to get to transport for inclusive societies if we keep on assessing the use of money in the way we've done it in the past decades? Is that really going to take us where we need? So in the interest of time, let me go just through 5 points and make it as concise as I can. Well, the idea here is we really need to look at investments through the lens of the social and the environmental impact they are really having or damage that they are actually having. So it's basically impact at the lowest cost for society as a whole now and for future generations. I think that's another aspect that we have to bear in mind. The second thought, therefore, is that are we sufficiently accounting for the social and environmental externalities of different modes and of different realities in different places? The third idea, therefore, would be, are we really having sufficient methodologies and good methodologies to account the extent to which the resilience of a community is being negatively impacted on or enhanced by a particular given transport project? And then, well, I cannot make, let go of this one. We need to end. fossil fuel subsidies in transport and rechannel those funds somewhere else in a socially just transition, absolutely. But we need to really go to that one. And the last one, listening to the minister is wow, it's phenomenal, isn't it? My point was going to be about, do we have the right assessment mechanisms, the right impact assessments? Are the safeguards robust enough? Is the phenomenal examples we had from the minister, are they the average worldwide? They are not. Do the narratives and the tools about transport, economics, equip us to go on the right track? Leave it for you for discussion. But thanks very much, Ali.
No, thank you. Luis Felipe de Oliveira, in 2 minutes, the question, you brought it up, the need to integrate, in order to integrate sustainable airport ground access to serve passengers, obviously, across communities better. Airports also need to reach out. They need to reach out to other transport stakeholders. Which are those, and how exactly are you doing that?
Well, we have, in terms of the airport itself, we have around 9 billion passengers in the year of 2019. That was a record year. And we expect to have in 20 years almost 20 billion passengers. We as an airport, you count 2 times because the passenger that takes a flight in one airport goes to another one. That's why it's double the size that IATA counts, for example. But it's 20 billion people, that will be in the system. And these people need to go to the airport. Yes, to go to the airport, we need to have an infrastructure that helps these people go to the airport by public transport, by other ways as well. We have a lot of new technologies that can help. Listening this morning, for example, people are talking about the self-driven cars. So how can airports adapt to that to the future? It's something that you need to think about that. In terms of the investments, now is the time to invest in more parking space at the airports, or how we can invest in other things? That's why how we can revisit these issues and how we can better adapt. And I think it's a question also of the different parts of the world, of the different approaches. As a citizen, certain parts of the world, you need to drive a 4x4 that you feel you grow in the society. In other countries, you need to take a public transport, you know. And I think that we need to change the mindset of the world, that the public transport is safe, is accessible. And I think the example of Morocco, the example of Colombia, there is a very good examples that how we can include the socio-economic aspects of the public transport and how that can benefit infrastructures like we have in the airports. So how we can bring these people there. Tax incentives and others, that's why it can go on and on, but I think I think I make a point. Thank you.
You sure did. Thank you so much for the perspective from airports, indeed. Quite interesting. We're having all the stakeholders here actually in this panel together. The ITF devised a beautiful panel to give us all a different perspective and bring in the voices. As the host country this year is Morocco, and Saad Chandid, looking at the time, you will get the final word, but the final word will be 60 seconds.
Justement, en complément du programme d'investissement important du saut technologique.
Yes, just to reiterate the most important investment program that I mentioned earlier, it contains an important element that we were able to include, and that is the establishment of railway stations at airports. That is something that didn't used to exist in our country, and often the idea was that airports should be multimodal centers, hubs where several different kinds of services are available, because so many people arrive at airports and depart from them on a daily basis. So we want to integrate the city in this railway station at the airport, and that is an important experience that we made as part of a cooperation with various stakeholders to make sure that the railway stations really fulfilled their full potential. And that's very important in this new concept.
In transport for greater inclusion, I think I speak for all when I say this has been a very content-rich debate in which we got to hear many different sides. Obviously, the policy sector very much involved, international organizations, the private companies, private sector here as well. I think one thing is for sure, everybody wants the same thing. We do want more collaboration for greater inclusion. Sometimes perhaps the way to get there might be different, but I think one thing that has come out from the session clearly, the will to collaborate is certainly very much here on all sides. Minister Gomes, Yuji Hirako, Marusha Kardama, Luis Felipe de Oliveira, and Sa Chandi, thank you so much. This is your applause. Thank you so much.